You ever get that message that makes your heart stop for just a second? That name lights up your phone. That person who vanished. That silence you thought you made peace with suddenly breaks, and everything inside you feels like it's about to flip. You stare at the screen. Your mind starts racing. Should I answer? What does this mean? Why now? And in that moment, that tiny space between impulse and action, your power hangs in the balance. Because this isn't just about him reaching out. It's about you. It's about the version of you who used to wait. The one who replayed conversations at 2 a.m., who wondered what went wrong, who thought maybe if you'd done something differently, he'd have stayed. But now he's back. And here's the real question, not what will you say, but who are you now that he's finally said something? See, people come and go. That's human behavior. They disappear when things get uncomfortable. They vanish to chase ego, distraction, or control. And when they return, it's often not because they've changed. It's because they felt your absence. So before you even think about responding, I want you to pause, take a breath, because this isn't about what you text back. This is about what that moment reveals, about your growth, your boundaries, your self-worth. This is not a story about him. It's a story about how you respond to being tested. And I'm going to teach you how to respond with composure, clarity, and command. Because the way you respond after silence tells the world exactly how much you've evolved since the last time they underestimated you. Before you respond, before you type a single word, you need to come back to yourself. Because that message, that sudden hey after weeks, months, maybe even years of silence, it's not just a text, it's a test of your composure, your growth, your discipline, and your control over your emotions. Most people fail that test. They react, they rush, they hand over their power in seconds, all because they confuse surprise with significance. But not you, not anymore. You see, power isn't about dominance or control. It's about emotional stability, the ability to hold your ground when someone tries to shake it. When you get that message, your mind will try to run wild. You'll replay every memory, every conversation, every unfinished sentence. You'll try to decode the motive, the tone, the timing. But what you need to understand is that your first response isn't the message you send. It's the energy you choose to hold. So pause, take a deep breath, feel your feet on the ground. That's your power returning to you. This is the space between stimulus and response, and it's the most powerful space you own. This is where maturity lives. This is where you decide who leads, your emotions or your awareness. Because the truth is, silence changes people. The version of you that once chased, waited, or hoped is gone. And this message, it's not an invitation to relive the past. It's a mirror reflecting how far you've come. When you respond too quickly, you let someone else set the tone. You hand them the remote control to your emotions. Think about it, they had time to be silent. They had time to decide when and how to reach out. So why shouldn't you give yourself the same time to decide how to respond? You're not reacting anymore. You're evaluating. That's what emotionally intelligent people do. They assess before they act. They don't let old emotions rush them into new mistakes. And here's something important. You don't owe anyone immediate access to your peace. When someone disappears, they create distance. When they return, they don't automatically earn the right to re-enter. You get to decide if and when that door opens again. That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. You've worked too hard to rebuild your peace, to relearn your worth, to finally understand that not every connection deserves continuation. Sometimes people reach out, not because they miss you, but because they miss how you made them feel. They miss the comfort, the validation, the attention. They miss the version of themselves they were when you were still giving. But here's the secret. Your energy was the gift, not the loss. Your silence, your absence, your growth. That's what they're feeling now. The moment you understand that, the dynamic shifts. You stop asking, why did he reach out? And start thinking, what does this say about my growth? Reclaiming your power means controlling your narrative. It means not letting someone's reappearance disrupt your peace. You don't have to be cold or cruel. You just have to be composed. Composure is the language of strength. You can acknowledge the message without surrendering your energy. You can respond from a place of curiosity, not craving. You can listen without absorbing. That's power, not the loud kind, but the silent, grounded kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Ask yourself, what version of me is showing up right now? The old one who reacted out of fear, or the new one who chooses from self-respect? Because how you respond tells you which one is leading. Every time you hold back from impulsively reacting, you remind yourself, I'm in control. And that control isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, psychological, and physical. You're teaching your nervous system that you are safe without their validation, that you don't need closure from them to move forward, that your peace is self-generated, not borrowed. Think of it like training. The same way a professional must stay calm under stress. You train your emotions to stay steady under pressure. You become your own protector. You don't need to block emotion, but you do need to guide it, because the one thing more powerful than reacting is responding with intention. Before you respond, ask yourself, what outcome am I seeking here? Do I want to reconnect, or do I just want to feel seen? Do I want to rebuild something, or do I want to understand why this happened? Because once you're clear on your why, your how becomes easy. You won't send messages for validation. You'll send them for clarity. You won't chase. You'll choose. There's strength in restraint. The moment you stop rushing to prove your worth, you start radiating it. People can feel when your energy has shifted, when you're not chasing closure, not begging for attention, not performing emotional labor for someone who walked away. And that shift often intimidates people because they remember a version of you that was available, forgiving, and open. They reach out expecting that version, but instead they find someone who's calm, grounded, and no longer emotionally accessible on demand. That contrast, that's your growth in action. You don't need to explain the silence. You don't need to justify your peace. The old you might have filled the quiet with long explanations, apologies, or attempts to fix what wasn't yours to fix. But the new you understands that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. You've already learned what needed to be learned. You've already processed what needed to be felt. Now your only responsibility is to protect your evolution. So when that message comes in, remember this, you are not obligated to revisit a chapter you've already read. You're not required to entertain uncertainty disguised as curiosity. You don't have to prove you've healed by responding with kindness. Sometimes real healing looks like taking your time, like letting the message sit there unanswered while you decide what truly serves your peace. Reclaiming your power means knowing that not everything that returns deserves your attention. It means remembering that your silence was not weakness. It was recovery. It was reflection. It was rebuilding. And now that you've rebuilt, you guard that foundation with discernment. When you finally decide to respond, if you do it from strength, not scarcity. Do it with the understanding that you are in control of the narrative. Not every message deserves a reply, and not every voice deserves an audience. Respond because you choose to, not because you need to. Because that is what true power looks like. Not in how loud you speak, but in how steady you stand when the past tries to pull you back. You've already lived that version of yourself. This time you're not reacting, you're responding from power, from peace, and from purpose. When someone reappears after silence, the first thing you'll want to do is grab onto the words, the text, the tone, the punctuation, the hey that lands like a small grenade in your piece. You'll want to analyze every syllable, every emoji, every pause. You'll wonder if it's sincere, if it's casual, if it means what you hope it means. But here's the truth. Words are easy. Anyone can send a message. Words are the cheapest currency of connection. What really matters is the intention behind them, because intention reveals truth long before words ever do. When someone reaches out after being silent, Your first instinct might be to assume they've had some great revelation. Maybe they've finally realized what they lost. Maybe they've missed you. Maybe the silence taught them something. But don't rush to romanticize it. People often reach out, not because they've changed, but because they're uncomfortable with the consequences of their own absence. Maybe something reminded them of you. A song, a place, a moment. Maybe they're lonely. Maybe their ego just got bruised and they need a quick fix of validation. You can't know until you look deeper. That's where intention lives. In the why, not the what. So pause and observe. Don't just read the message. Read the moment. Why now? Why this way? Why after all this time? These questions aren't for paranoia. They're for perspective. They help you step back and see the bigger picture. When people operate from guilt, boredom, or insecurity, their actions carry a different weight than when they act from genuine growth or clarity. The challenge is to train yourself to see the difference. Here's how you start. Pay attention to patterns. If this person has a history of disappearing and reappearing, their behavior is communicating consistency, just not the kind you want. If the message feels vague, non-committal, or surface level, it's likely about checking if the door's still open, not about walking through it with intention. The mind loves to fill in blanks with hope, but wisdom comes from sitting in the reality of what's actually there. Intention isn't something people tell you, it's something they reveal through behavior. Someone with real intention will match their words with consistent action. They'll follow up. They'll be clear. They'll own their silence instead of pretending it never happened. They'll bring clarity where there was confusion. But someone whose intention is shallow will keep it light, avoid accountability, and expect you to slide back into old patterns like nothing ever happened. That's why you have to protect your discernment. The moment you receive that message, your emotional brain will want to respond, to reconnect, to make meaning out of the moment. But your wise mind, the part that's been through the pain, the healing, the silence, knows better. It knows that intention can't be assumed. It must be observed. Think of it like reading body language. The words might say one thing, but the energy says another. You can sense hesitation, deflection, or insincerity if you're quiet enough to listen with your intuition instead of your emotions. Don't let the familiarity of the voice distract you from the truth of the situation. Familiar doesn't mean safe. History doesn't equal honesty. Sometimes people return to what's familiar not because they value it, but because it's comfortable. And here's the thing about silence. It teaches you to hear differently. When you've spent time alone, healing, reflecting, and rebuilding, your senses sharpen. You begin to recognize when someone's communication lacks depth. You start noticing when words are meant to fill space rather than bridge understanding. You no longer confuse attention with effort. So when they reach out, don't rush to interpret their words as a sign of change. Ask yourself, do their actions align with someone who's truly ready to reconnect or someone just seeking reassurance that I'm still here? True intention carries weight. It shows up through ownership, not excuses. A person with real intent won't just say, I've missed you. They'll say, I realized I hurt you. I should have communicated better. I want to make things right. There's depth in that. There's reflection. But when the message is casual, hey, how have you been? After weeks or months of silence, understand that it's not always an invitation to rebuild. Sometimes it's just curiosity disguised as care. And your job isn't to decode every motive. It's to decide whether it even matters, whether their intention aligns with your peace. You don't have to expose them, confront them, or force honesty out of them. You just have to be honest with yourself. Ask, what does this message bring into my space? Clarity or confusion? If it brings confusion, that's your answer. Not every reappearance deserves investigation. There's also something powerful about not assuming the worst, but staying neutral. Neutrality is a form of self-protection. It means you observe without attaching meaning. You don't project your hopes or your fears. You simply let the truth unfold through behavior. Because given enough time, people always reveal what they truly want. If their intention is genuine, You'll see consistency. If it's fleeting, you'll feel it fade quickly. When you learn to understand intention over words, you free yourself from emotional manipulation. You stop giving weight to empty gestures. You stop chasing explanations that never come. You stop mistaking someone's moment of weakness for a moment of growth. That's when your self-worth begins to lead the conversation, not your emotions. This is emotional intelligence at its highest level. The ability to step outside your feelings long enough to see reality clearly. It's not about being cold, it's about being conscious. It's knowing that you can be kind and compassionate, but still firm in your boundaries. You can care about someone's pain without reopening your own wounds. You can listen without leaning in. That's strength. When someone reaches out, remember their message is data, not destiny. Gather it, analyze it, and decide what it means for you. You're not obligated to engage just because they finally did. You're not required to answer questions that no longer concern you. The silence gave you perspective. Don't let a few words take that away. So the next time that notification lights up your screen, don't rush to feel flattered. Don't rush to feel angry. Don't rush at all. Take a breath and ask yourself, what is this really about? Sometimes it's genuine. Sometimes it's not. But the beauty is, you no longer need to guess. Because when you understand intention, you see clearly. And when you see clearly, you respond from strength, not from need. That's the difference between reaction and awareness. Between the old version of you, who wanted answers, and the new version who creates her own peace. The words might sound the same, but you're no longer reading them with the same heart. You've grown past the surface. You're tuned into truth. And once you learn to listen for intention instead of words, you'll never again be fooled by noise pretending to be meaning. When someone from your past reappears, it's natural for old emotions to start moving again. Memories, feelings, questions that you thought you'd buried deep. Suddenly, everything you worked so hard to heal starts whispering again, trying to pull you back into what once was. But here's the thing. You don't have to reopen old wounds to see what's inside. You've already seen it. You've already lived it. The goal now isn't to revisit what hurt you, it's to redefine the terms of how you allow people to access you from this point forward. The moment that message comes in, the past will tempt you. It will remind you of how things felt in the beginning, of laughter, of comfort, of moments that felt safe. But you need to remember why that story ended, because sometimes our hearts have selective memory. They hold on to the warmth and forget the burn. That's what reopening old wounds does. It makes you forget the pain, long enough to make the same mistake again. And that's not growth, that's repetition. Redefining the terms means that if someone comes back, they no longer get to meet the same version of you. The dynamic has changed because you have changed. The boundaries are new. The communication is different. You're not entering this conversation hoping to be chosen. You're entering it knowing you get to choose. That shift alone changes everything. It moves you from being the one waiting for validation to being the one who decides what kind of energy is allowed near you. This doesn't mean you build walls around yourself or become cynical. It means you build gates. And only those who come with honesty, accountability, and genuine effort get to walk through them. Because not every "I miss you" deserves an open door. Some deserve a quiet acknowledgement and nothing more. Growth doesn't mean you become hard, it means you become discerning. You learn the difference between what is familiar and what is healthy. So when they reach out, start by listening, not to their words, but to how their presence makes you feel. Does your body relax, or does it tense up? Do you feel peace, or do you feel anxiety disguised as excitement? The body never lies. It remembers what your mind tries to rationalize. Pay attention to that. If the conversation pulls you back into the same emotional chaos you fought so hard to leave, that's not reconnection, that's relapse. And you're not here to relapse. You're here to rise. Redefining the terms also means you stop explaining your boundaries like they're negotiable. You've already learned that people who truly respect you don't need long explanations, they just adjust. You can be polite and direct. You can say, "I appreciate your message. What made you reach out now?" That one question holds power. It's calm, it's controlled, and it shifts the dynamic immediately. It puts responsibility back where it belongs on them. If their intention is shallow, that question alone will expose it. If they're sincere, it will invite honesty. Too often we reopen wounds because we confuse closure with conversation. We think we need to talk it out to move on. But real closure doesn't come from someone's explanation. It comes from your decision to stop seeking validation for what hurt you. You don't need to understand why they disappeared or why they acted the way they did. What you need to understand is that you survived it, and that survival gave you a new standard for what you will and won't tolerate. When someone from your past reappears, treat it like an opportunity for reflection, not reconciliation. Ask yourself, what did that connection teach me the first time? What boundaries did I learn to set because of it? What did I discover about myself through the pain? That's the lesson. That's the growth. You can acknowledge their message without erasing your evolution. Because the moment you start rewriting the story to make them comfortable, you start betraying yourself again. You owe it to yourself to honor the work you've done to heal. Think of healing like scar tissue. It's stronger than the skin that tore. But it's still sensitive. It still remembers where it was cut. Every time you reopen that wound, you risk tearing what you've worked so hard to rebuild. So instead of reopening, reinforce it, redefine it. Make that scar a symbol of resilience, not a reminder of regret. Redefining the terms also means you change the way you communicate. You're no longer reactive. You don't need to match their energy. You set your own tone. You don't chase clarity. You create it. You can speak with compassion and still be firm. You can care and still say no. That's maturity, not coldness, but control. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting yourself. Sometimes the hardest part of redefining the terms is accepting that you may never get the apology you deserve. And that's okay, because forgiveness doesn't require their participation. Forgiveness is something you give yourself when you decide their actions no longer have the power to define you. So if they reach out and say, I've been thinking about you, you can acknowledge it without reopening the past. You can think, I've thought about me too, and I've worked too hard to lose myself again. Let the past be a teacher, not a trap. Don't go back to old situations hoping they'll look different. Just because time has passed, time doesn't change people, awareness does. Unless someone has done the work, they'll return with the same patterns, the same excuses, the same emotional immaturity. And you'll know this time, because you're not responding from longing, you're responding from learning. You get to define what happens next. You can choose silence. You can choose a polite response. You can choose a boundary that protects your energy. Whatever you choose, make sure it honors your growth. Make sure it reinforces the message that your peace is not up for negotiation. You're not the same person who tolerated uncertainty, half-effort, or inconsistency. You've learned how to recognize emotional responsibility, and you expect it now. That's redefining the terms. It's saying, if you want access to me, it must come with respect, honesty, and intention. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about whether they've changed. It's about whether you have. It's about whether you'll let your heart lead with wisdom instead of wounds. Whether you'll protect your peace more fiercely than you protect the past. And if you can do that, if you can stay grounded in who you've become, then no matter what they say, no matter how they show up, you'll never lose yourself again. The past is not a place to live. It's a place to learn. And the next time someone from that place comes knocking, remember, you don't have to reopen the door. You can simply redefine what it means to have access to you. That's not bitterness, that's growth. That's the quiet power of someone who's done the work, healed the wound, and decided that peace is the only story worth repeating. Silence has a language of its own. It's one of the most powerful forms of communication we have, but it's also the most misunderstood. People think silence means weakness, avoidance, or indifference. They think if you don't respond, you don't care. But in truth, silence often means the opposite. It means you've reached a level of strength where you no longer feel the need to explain, defend, or prove yourself to anyone. It means you've mastered the art of restraint. And restraint, especially in a world that constantly demands reaction, is power. When someone reaches out after being silent, the most natural instinct is to respond, to say something, anything, just to fill the space that's been empty for so long. The urge is emotional. You want closure, you want understanding, you want to show you've moved on or that you're fine, but not responding doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you've chosen peace over performance. You've decided that some connections no longer deserve your energy. Not because you hate them, but because you've outgrown the chaos that comes with them. Silence is not passive. It's intentional. It's the decision to protect your mental and emotional space. When you don't respond, you're not avoiding the person. You're honoring yourself. You're saying, I no longer engage where my energy is not respected. That's an act of self-discipline, not detachment. It's emotional maturity in its purest form. People often confuse reaction with strength. They think that responding quickly shows confidence, but real confidence doesn't rush. It doesn't scramble to prove a point. It doesn't chase validation or clarity from those who already showed they couldn't offer it before. Real confidence is quiet, it's measured. It's the